Welcome to the Press Club with me, Kendall Burton, and Earl Buske, a show where we review the big stories making news every week. Let's take a look at some of the headlines making the newspapers today. The Star newspaper has Francois accepted a $5 million handshake. Also, residents say Bexar lives matter. The Voice newspaper, HIA bids in, Staspers GM satisfied with process, and LPM begins candidate selection. The official government newspaper, Nationwide, keeping communities working. And the Mirror newspaper, unauthorized tuition hike, a reference to the situation at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. And of course, Mr. Buske's favorite newspaper inserts from the Voice newspaper, the Yo magazine, the Tonight magazine from the Star newspaper, and the ladies are back. I know you're happy about that. And the Sports and Health insert was the headline there, Rochelle Etienne, bronze medalist CYG. Where you want to start today, Mr. Buske? What story stuck out in your mind this week?
For today, in terms of today's main story, is the front page of the Star, which is, it depends on how you want to look at it. It is saying that the Star has been informed reliably that the commissioner who is on leave has settled for what the Star describes as a golden handshake valued at $5 million. And of course it is quoting an unnamed source and giving indications as to what it claims its source has indicated as to what the future leadership of the police force is going to look like. It doesn't give any indication as to when and how, but it is one of those stories that you can only wait until whatever happens to see whether the source, the unnamed source,
is accurate or
was
not?
accurate or not.
But according to this story,
sorry about that.
Severin Marchery, a veteran of 27 years under his police belt, is being looked at as the next top cop. Obviously, the current acting police commissioner, as we all know, is going on retirement. The suggestion is that retirement offers and deals have been offered to a number of other police officers apart from the police commissioner, allegedly, because we still don't know that it's a fact, and those have not been given responses to. But this is, in terms of public reaction or anticipation of this, there's been a lot of talk in the weeks leading up to this story coming out about retirement offers and golden handshakes and multi-million-dollar handshakes and that sort of thing. The concern is who is qualified to head the police force, and the subject has been brought up again. Do we go the route of promoting a local, especially in light of the impacts report, or do we want to bring in an outsider, as has been done in the past, in order to rein the men in and to consolidate and reunite the police force?
It's one of those situations, unfortunately, Kendall, where do you damned, don't you still damned, in that the appointment of a police commissioner, there are options open, and there are different ways it can be done. It is as contentious as the promotion within the police force itself, which the Police Welfare Association has taken the force to court over, in terms of the ability of the commissioner to decide what approach should be taken to promotions. So that the options that you have mentioned are all on the table. The position can be advertised. We need a police commissioner, especially because of these circumstances. The other route, which you referred to in terms of promotion from within, looking and see who best fits the position, whether on the basis of length of service or ability to do the job. That would come into consideration. In fact, Rick Wayne's story in the Star is also saying that the gentleman named Mr. Monsheri has been referred to by Rick's source as saying he's not sure he's ready for the job. So even there, the speculation, that's adding to the speculation. There's also the whole question as to what is the role of the executive, whether it is what is power does the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the Minister of National Security and Home Affairs, what role they have. At the end of the day, the Commissioner is appointed by the Governor General on the recommendation of the Public Service Commission, which is the body which another section of our press had earlier indicated, again quoting an unnamed source, that the Public Service Commission had offered to retire the Commissioner in the public interest. So is this reference now a follow-up on that? Is the retirement in the public interest going to be something that will cost the public $5 million? Is it fair to describe it as a golden handshake in the circumstances? Can we? Would it? Who's paying? You know, all of these things are issues that we can pursue depending on how much strength we put on into a speculative story. But at the end of the day, it is very clear that the Commissioner himself is batting in his crease and saying, not a word, not a word, not a word.
But it still doesn't address the substantive issue, which is the impacts report and the relations with the United States. Right, because so far, as the story points out, the Director of Public Prosecution has had the files in her possession for a few months now. We've not heard any public statements on it, on progress in that case. Nor have we heard any statements about what the United States is saying or doing in terms of extending assistance to the local law enforcement. Is it satisfied that enough is being done? Is the retirement of the police commissioner and the other senior officers that are being suggested are being sent on retirement, is that enough? You know, or do they want to see deeper, more significant changes within the police force?
I think if we go back to the Prime Minister's address on the 8th of March, yeah, International Women's Day it was, on the evening of the 8th of March, on the impacts report, following that, the picture that emerged in the weeks thereafter and between then and now is to the effect that the United States State Department has taken action on the basis of the findings of the report. And their main action in relation to St. Lucia is to say we are taking a series of steps, including not funding, giving you any funding for anything, not allowing you to attend anything that we are funding, and of course including not allowing senior police officers, including the Commissioner, to enter the United States, to even attend meetings of a security nature. The Prime Minister also said that it is inconceivable that we could have a situation where neither the Commissioner nor the Deputy Commissioner can represent St. Lucia in national security, regional security meetings with our main international security partner, the United States. So also what emerged out of that too was that the State Department was saying, in effect, to St. Lucia, that until and unless certain things happen to make us satisfied that you're acting on that impacts report, the embargo will continue. And therefore, as you correctly pointed out, the impacts report is at the DPP's office. The history of the speed with which the DPP's office acts on any issue is one which is determined solely and exclusively by the DPP, and therefore it would seem, if what I've described, if that sequence stands, then it would seem that the embargo is going to remain in place because the government of St. Lucia cannot and has not satisfied the U.S. State Department that it is taking the kind of action it needs to take on the findings of the impacts report. Now, the government will say, well, listen, we have done things. We have given the DPP the allocations for 3 extra public prosecutors. We've added to the hierarchy of the force. We're rearranging it. We're doing what we can do as a government. That is what the government would be saying. But it would also be saying to the U.S., but we cannot tell the court what to do. We cannot tell the DPP what to do. We'll be accused of interference, and it could have implications for the case. And I can hear the U.S. saying, well, that's your business in St. Lucia until such time as you have done what the Leahy Act says you have to do to satisfy us. You know, it's up to you to make sure you do your business faster. So in the circumstances, as long as in those circumstances, as long as the status quo remains, you know, in terms of the leadership of the force, in terms of the speed with which the DPP's office begins to act on the findings of the impacts report to determine whether there are cases to answer. But again, we have to remember, Kendall, always remember that if the DPP, the role of the DPP is to determine whether there are cases to answer, and if it is one report, how is she going to approach it? Is she going to approach it case by case? If so, in each case of an alleged extrajudicial killing, they would be dealing with more than one police officer. And therefore, how many cases are they looking into? How many police officers would be involved? The length of that process, you know, is something that is going to take time. Now, if we have to wait until the end of that process to satisfy Washington that we are doing something about it, then it means that the status quo is going to remain for quite some time. So in those circumstances, the idea of a golden handshake, you know, can easily be put on the table, as has been done on the Star's front page. If it is a golden handshake, who's paying? You know, who's paying the golden handshake? That wasn't answered. When I know that, I'll be able to see what color gloves I think, you know, the hands should be in.
But I think just as we did in the case of the impacts report, brought in officers from Jamaica, looking at the situation in Jamaica, well, although they were not, the Leahy law was not imposed on them, but you have had a lot of police corruption, police killing, what could be called, using the term extrajudicial police killings. The way they have approached it in terms of the importation of police commissioners, reviews of procedures within the police department. I'm not aware, I'm subject to correction, of any major changes in police procedure, operations of the police department to avoid a repetition of what just happened.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful to equate St. Lucia and Jamaica simply from the standpoint that there are two police forces, two national police forces involved. The Jamaica Constabulary, which is what the police force is described at, is a much experienced, older, better organized, and more deeply involved in the whole issue of use of force and excessive use of force by police officers. However, in this context, we would have to be considering the relationship between Jamaica and the United States, the security relationship at the national level. And when you look at, for example, the pursuit by the United States of Dodos Coke in Jamaica, the role of the United States working with the Jamaica Police Force, and the extent to which the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, and the National Security Agency in the United States were deeply involved in orchestrating and actually taking charge of the daily operations when they were going after Dodos Coke, is one which, in the context of national security relations between governments, there are some things that are on paper and there are some others that are not on paper. And in terms of the historic relationship between the U.S. and Jamaica, and the active role of the CIA in Jamaica, particularly under during the early Siaga periods, one could understand that some Jamaican Prime Minister earlier in the day would most likely have negotiated Jamaica's immunity from application of the Leahy Act. Because if we are to just go by figures and facts and measuring of circumstances, we can always conclude, as everybody correctly does, that the situation in Jamaica is worse than ours.
Yeah, but as we've also pointed out, the Leahy law could easily be applied in a number of other jurisdictions.
Where they're not,
where it appears to be very subjective in how they apply.
So there must be, but I would say to that, there must be a particular reason why the United States would climb the two pitons in terms of St. Lucia in application of the Leahy Act. It would suggest to me that there is something, and there is a lot that we don't know about the nature of this whole conundrum. I am beginning to think that it is more than just extrajudicial killings. That the extrajudicial killings are, are the headline catching. It's the most headline catching aspect of it. But I suspect that there are other aspects to it, because remember the impacts report, or the sections quoted were mainly in relation to the allegations of extrajudicial killings by police. But remember, there's also another element to this, which I'm not sure whether the impacts report looked into, and that is that travel visas of senior police officers had also been withdrawn. Were those visas withdrawn? Were travel restrictions imposed in relation to extrajudicial killings, or were those actions related to other issues? And that is an area that we might have to look into, as to whether the withdrawal of visas and travel documents of senior police officers is related to extrajudicial killings or otherwise.
We're due for a break. Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about some of the other stories in the news this week. This is the Press Club. We'll be right back.